Ladies and gentlemen, one of our favorite individuals on the entire planet. He once was on the other side of it, but he's moved a little closer. And this is the creator of Adapt 2030, David DuByne. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks for having me. I'm starting to see a lot of similarities of things repeating, and I see a lot of distractions to try to cover up the repeating history and cycles, man. Let's go from here.
Yeah, well, you were just showing me some of your seeds, so let's just plant the seed, and let's just show them some of the stuff you were just going through.
Yeah, so what I'm doing right now is I got this box of seeds, all these different ones. So what I'm trying to do is put it out into the months for the planting, because I've already plotted out, I have 23 acres out here, and been banging around the property looking for the different light for the lower light vegetables, some of the more pure west facing. I got a bunch of muscadine vines. I've been replanting those in pots at the moment, and then I'm going to get the trellises out. So I'm trying to harvest all the natural thing. I got a ton of blueberries, like natural wild blueberries, and what else out there? Mulberry trees. So I'm trying to place everything in the correct spot for my own fruit yield. And starting with the seeds, I mean, we're going to have to grow our own food. Are you kidding me? Look at the price rises and everything coming in now. So I'm just trying to scope out my garden to see what the planting schedule is for each of the sets of seeds here, like which month, because I'm in zone 7A, Eastern Tennessee. So for me, planting is going to be different than you, Diamond, because you're still higher or altitude up there, and more northerly latitude as well in a different grow zone. So your planting schedule will be different than mine. And the guys down in Mississippi I'm talking with, they're already getting ready to plant down there. So
yeah, well,
it's all about getting the food ready, and cycles are here. So please, if you can do one thing, go buy seeds somewhere this week of something you like to eat and learn how to plant it and when you can plant it and get something ready to plant it.
Yeah, I was just checking my website links because since last year, most of the seed packages that I offer in my Amazon store, they've been unavailable. But what I saw was that the Heirloom 45 and some of the larger heirloom packets, which are more desirable for about $1 per pack, you can get a huge variety of heirloom seeds, like up to 50 varieties. They are now re-available on Amazon, so buy them up while you still can. It's literally planting season. And last year during planting season, there were no seeds available. You remember that?
I do. And some of the things I've been looking at, because I also buy seeds frequently, and I put them in the Mylar bags that'll last 25 years. I like to keep those emergency supplies. And I noticed that the seed price, and this is interesting. I went to Amazon to get the pack, and it had 50,000 seeds in it, and it was $105. I left it in my cart for, 10 days or something, and I come back, and it was $118. So these kind of price jumps, and then it'll be up again. It'll probably be 128 by the time we go into planting season. So you're looking at 20% rises on seeds. And yeah, last year there was a real shortage on seeds. I mean, you could still get the mustard greens and stuff, but you can't live off of that. Kale and mustard greens. You could. I mean, it's bitter and whatnot, but that was kind of what was left. Those things for the tomatoes and the squash and the pumpkins and the things you really could eat, corn. So here's my story. I had to go to the co-op, and I ordered 1,000 pounds of buckwheat because I want to plant in my field out here 5 acres of buckwheat for a pollinator habitat this spring with the bees. I had to pre-order it. They don't have it anymore out. They had to order it from the supplier. And then the sorghum I'm also getting, I ordered 2,000 pounds, 1 full ton of sorghum. Again, they would normally have that in where you could just go buy the 50-pound bags and load it in the back of the truck. But this time, no, you got to order everything now. The only thing that was in stock was the wheat berries, obviously the hard red winter.
Yeah.
A lot of the rye stuff, some barley. That was it. Everything else you have to order now. And this is from the co-op, and we're talking like straight up going to the farmers planting multi-tons of seeds. So for me to get 3,000 pounds of seed, I had to go out and order all that. But again, you can sprout it, you can eat it, and you can grow it.
Yeah.
So there's some definite. I'm seeing it right here, Diamond. There's definitely something going on the larger level now. Last year it was the retail. So if I want to say this last thing, last year it was retail, and we're both talking about that. This year, I'm telling you, it's at the industrial level. There's seed bottlenecks. I'm going to say bottlenecks. I'm not going to say shortage. I'm going to say bottlenecks at the moment. On the industrial level. These guys who are growing your food, literally thousands and thousands of acres, are struggling to get seed in now.
Well, let's talk about your ton of sorghum. What are you going to do with 2,000 pounds of sorghum? Is it for sprouting and feeding farm animals, or are you going to be growing sorghum, or is it to grind maybe? And are you using it as a prep for flour?
And I'm also going to try to distill some. So there's an enormous amount of things. See, that was one of my prime crops to look at to grow for the food, for the heads. You know, you get those amazing large heads, a couple pounds off each plant for the heads off of each head. There's three heads on those. It looks like corn. And when they come off and they spill over, a lot of times you get a pound and a half per head, sometimes more on the hybrid varieties. But the stalks, you know, that's where they used to get sugar from. So there's sugar in the stalk. Now, the Amish guys down the road, they still do the sugar cane. They do the molasses or whatever out of the sorghum stalk. Still do that. They got the horses go in a circle and they squeeze out just like you squeeze sugar cane.
Yeah,
you can squeeze the sorghum stalks also.
You can purchase used sorghum presses. There are a lot of them available. They're just two rollers that you put the sorghum stalks through, and they can run off of horses or PTOs or whatever. So I've seen those in operation, and they're fantastic. Because in an area like I'm in, where it's very hard to grow silver maples and some of the sugar sap producing trees don't exist, you can grow this sorghum and simply use the stalks. Now, to be honest, you have to be very particular on the type of sorghum you're buying, because some sorghum has more sugar in the cane and more juice and less seeds, and you really want a good balance where you get a good seed head and a good sugar cane. And so I'm pretty sure you have an all-purpose sorghum.
Yeah, be careful, because when I was going into order too, I almost ordered the wrong one, which was just for fodder. See, it never came to head, but it went up like 3-4 feet. And that was exactly what you're talking about for animal fodder. And I'm like, no. I want to get the actual head coming off that for the grain. So even, you know, the guy, if you go into a co-op, get guided through it, because there's like 30 different kinds of sorghum and they all have different uses and they're all for different zones and different areas. So again, yeah, I went for the sorghum for the grain, because you can eat that. You can turn it into the flour. You can sprout it out and give it to your animals. You can do a batch with it, add the sugar, add the yeast, and then you can distill that down into liquor. And and then you also, with the benefit of the sugar cane, of the sorghum cane, if you will, the sugar coming out of that. So I'm looking for multiple uses, and the green matter can be used for animal food too. So if you see an area like maybe it didn't get enough, I don't know. You can see where they broadcast spread it and it didn't come in really good and it's not growing that well, and fertilizer mist or lime mist or whatever, then you can harvest that for green matter for animals, and you can just like carve out that section of the field that's not doing so well, instead of trying to bring it up and you already know it's not going to, because it was late getting in there or whatever, the maturation, it sprouted, came up too late. Difficulty growing, cut that off, use it for animal food. So there's an enormous amount of uses for sorghum. I think it's one of the almost all around plants. Plus you're more versed in this than me. Tell everybody about the benefits of sorghum grain compared to like wheat and corn and things. It's like a superfood ancient grain.
Yeah, these are ancient grains, and sorghum is the largest of them. But you also have millet and amaranth, which are a much smaller grain. But these are much more complex. They just don't provide the carbohydrates that wheat and triticale and barleys do. They have a lot more complex proteins and other micronutrients in them. Just taking amaranth, for example, the seed shell itself has so many micronutrients in it. It's almost like eating a superfood supplement, which is why I think that a lot of the ancient people live very long lives, because they were making a lot of their flatbreads with amaranth. Now let's talk about growing these ancient grains, because I was recently on a homesteading site and people were getting made fun of when they said, hey, I'm interested in growing my own wheat for flour, and a bunch of idiot prepper homesteaders were like, growing wheat for flour, I mean, you get like a pound per acre. And I had to interject on some of these threads, because if you grow some of these organic wheats, you produce 50 bushels per acre. A single bushel of wheat equals over 60 pounds of flour, which means that per acre you get like 3,000 pounds of flour per acre, and no homesteader needs that. So in a small plot, 8 foot wide and 100 foot long, you can grow 60 pounds of flour a year in the form of wheat. And if you don't need 60 pounds, you only need 30 pounds, then 30 pounds of the wheat berries can be sprouted for your chickens and for your own wheatgrass and wheatgrass juice and other things that you're using it for. So you don't need much space to grow a lot of flour. 8 foot by 100 foot long, and you're golden.
Yeah, let me go back to. I'll give you some prices that I paid. So I did get millet at the co-op too. I bought the Japanese silver millet. It's a specific type of millet. It's straight for the grain head, and it was $72 for 50 pounds. Little expensive. I went and got some more wheat berries too, just because I like to have that for sprouting for the wheatgrass. $14 right now for a 50-pound bag. So, you're talking multiple tons coming off a field. So whoever said you only get a couple pounds off of the acreage you're growing just doesn't know what they're talking about. Tons. Maybe they meant a couple tons, not a couple pounds. Maybe they got the measurements mixed up.
They were making fun because a lot of people don't know that humans, individual families, have been growing wheat and grains time immemorial to feed their family. There were no stores that provided this. They grew it. I mean, that's how we got our flour, and then it was hand milled. And even the natives here, the Pueblo people, stone ground wild seeds to make their own flours. And then they learned how to cultivate and harvest some of the grains for higher production. So just how uneducated the public is in the times we're heading into, it's very scary. And I'm blessed to be in such a rural area surrounded by skilled people. And if they're not skilled, they're definitely people that are willing to learn a new skill. Is that how you feel out where you are?
Yeah, and one of the main skills that we should all start to think about and getting together, communication channels. And when I say that, I really mean like picking up a walkie-talkie. Here, I have my, I got my little portable ham radio here. But, who do I call? What if people are coming down the road? I mean, who's on channel? Do you have like your neighborhood or your group around you, your community? Is everybody on channel like 127 here? What we were looking at, we're at 142.35 for ours on the communication here. So, I mean, walkie-talkie, is everybody on the right channels when you're going? Like, what if somebody comes out? Like, how do you communicate with people? If something's going terribly wrong and you got whatever coming down the road, bandits or whatever, I mean, how do you communicate with people to say, hey, there's bandits coming down the road, we all need to assemble right over here? I mean, comms, you got to get the comms up. Seriously, I found myself lacking in that. I mean, we had the walkie-talkies and I got the ham radio and whatever, but the signal being in a valley, I had to buy this 100-foot antenna and I'm stringing through the trees and a few things. Comms, new skill everybody needs to learn. And then everybody's got to be a little bit proficient at it so you'll be able to understand to change channel if you need to and how to keep it charged up and, make sure everybody's on the same channels and do radio checks across the way and just things like that.
Yeah, indeed. We're working on getting a national grid up of preparedness groups like you, Lee, myself. We have some other compounds, as you might call them, or facilities in Arizona and up in the Northwest that all want to be communicating so that we have a larger national network. If, let's say, the shit hits the fan and the grid goes down in its extended period, no one's going to know what's happening. We'll immediately be able to get online and be communicating coast to coast between our groups. We can discuss maybe our supply scenario or our preparedness, and then we can then maybe network on how we're going to move forward in our areas. Maybe some groups are going to be under threat and they need to make it to us. So this will be a way for large groups to bug out and to create larger groups, which will be more sustainable and safer if we enter these times. Because you have to react quick. It has to happen in 24 to 48 hours. Not many people are going to be able to move cross country in a grid down scenario once the population knows that the lights aren't coming back on. But if you have enough fuel and supplies and you know what you're doing, you can get anywhere in the U.S. before the systems break down. And in my opinion, that's 72 hours after the event.
Yeah, agreed. And the whole thing is, it'll be a news blackout too, because your TVs are not going to work. Always have an emergency radio. You don't have that solar powered channel. And I also have the hand cranked. But communication channels, just to even understand the flow of information, even to get the emergency broadcast system. Once your phone's run out of juice, once your house is turned off, once you can't recharge anything, if you're not prepared at least with the very minimum to either have, like you say, a generator out there, but that's overkill to charge some devices, but to have some, foldable solar panels, portables, whatever, to be able to recharge just the simple stuff so you can keep your comms channels up at the minimum. This is what I'm talking about, learning the new skill set. It's going to be a very terrifying world if you have no information coming in and the lights are out and you don't know what's going on for day 2. You're going to lose your mind, literally. You're going to lose your mind if you don't know. And having a simple radio next to you to even get the weather, or, you know, so you won't even know severe storms are coming in if you don't have any comms up. Like something that simple that we take so for granted, that there's going to be a weather bulletin. Well, maybe not. Yeah. There might be an emergency broadcast. Maybe not. Well, you know, they're going to leave you in a whole different world if you don't have simple communication devices.
Yeah, if you're scared about entering this world, the first step in is to get a set of walkie-talkies and to talk with people in your own group on your own property. We have a great set of walkie-talkies here. They're expandable, so you can go from 4 to 8 to 16. They're all on the same channel. They go up to 16 miles in a straight shot. We were using them at LeakCon. They worked a quarter mile through 10 floors of building, and they were crystal clear. So you really want to research. I think we got some Bofangs from our store. They're around $80.
Yeah, that's what this is. It's a bow phone right here.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a 4-pack for about $90, and they're worth it. They keep a charge for days. You can, charge them in limited juice on solar. So that's the first step: walkie-talkies and communicating in your region. Maybe with your neighbor, or a couple people if you're in a community, so they can have the talkies. Then you discuss what channels you're going to be on, and you go from there. The second thing you can do for under $100 is buy a CB from our Amazon store. We have about 20 CBs under $100, and this will allow you to communicate locally to truckers and other radio gurus, that when the grid goes down or something and you can turn your CB on, they're going to be chatting it up on there because they're going to be wanting the same thing you want, and that's information. You can also listen to local radio and fire on that, and then you could step it up and get a scanner. That has...
And police...
Go ahead.
No, police channels too. If you go on to channel 9 on the CB, or 19, but channel 9 for the police. I mean, you can get on there if there's any police chatter, you'll hear that, because generally that's what they're going to be on that channel on a regular CB radio.
Yeah, but for about $200, you can get a really nice scanner, which allows you to communicate with all the hidden police channels that are not on the CB. Lee Wilbarger uses those channels. And that's another step up where you really can't talk to them, but you can listen to everything they're saying for a few $100s. And then the step up from there, obviously, is to get into ham radio or shortwave radio, FM band, and some of the larger meter scale. And that requires you getting a license, which isn't that hard to do. It's a multiple choice test at the AARL. This is the, American Association of Retired Losers. But they're called ham operators.
Radio operator.
You know what I'm talking about. But there are a lot of people in your
ham bone.
Yeah, there are a lot of people in your area that know what they're doing, and they may be a little creepy, but they could save your arse in a grid down scenario.
Yeah, because the further we're looking at it here, each day marching forward is getting a little less stable. Because I can't believe one thing. The groups of individual investors that were sharing information on Reddit and actually pushed and caused these hedge funds to lose billions on short calls because they were trying to bankrupt a company and everybody make money by everybody in the professional industry going short. And then these other raiders come in just like you and me, and all these people push in and go, hey, let's boost this company and force out the short sellers. And now they want to stop markets and say, we got to resettle everything. And you individual investors, we're going to lock sales on that particular GameStop there for 30 days. They're talking about this. If we're this close where they need to stop markets because institutional investors are losing their shirt because of individual investors, we're getting really close to a full financial collapse. I mean, really close. And if bank machines go down, and that's a whole other thing to think about. I mean, but look for the signs around you. It's not going to catch you completely off guard, like we're sitting here and then the power goes out. I mean, there should be some warning that something's completely amiss. Yeah. If you get a bank holiday, that'd be one. But these whole things going on where the markets are getting completely rigged, so fake. It was all fake anyway, but now they're telling you as an individual investor, you're not important. And the big guys have to take the money because when they stop selling on that, then they call it repositioning. They're going to allow everybody to reposition. And the institutional investors will be able to keep selling that share over there of GameStop, but you'll be stopped out for 30 days. And once you get back in, it'll be worth like 2 cents. This is the beginning of the end here, in my opinion. Seeing that specific story, I'm so focused on that story because that is what changes. See, institutional money can go in and take their relief funds and, roll back, and the Treasury can keep buying out and doing whatever they do, put it on the books. And, every government could buy all private corporation. Okay, fine. But but when it comes down to where you're actually saying the individual investor does not have the right to make money because you're causing a loss to the institutions, we've reached the end. We've truly, we've reached the end, Diamond. We're at the end, where it's so in your face and so apparent and so open, so transparent of what's happening. That could easily cause something to happen too, because there are millions of individual investors that are about to get screwed if they do stop trading on, who knows what's going to happen. But they're all calling, oh, we're losing our money. We got stopped out. These individual traders are making us lose money. You got to help us, SEC. You got to stop trading. This is at the point of, politics might make people angry. You didn't lose money. Well, you did if you.
Now here, I have something else. I have something else to share with you. Banks in our areas are even getting suspicious. A neighbor of mine who watches the show, they know about what's going on. They have a little bit too much cash in one of their accounts in town, and they don't want to be locked out of that. So instead of leaving, let's say, a few $100,000 in cash in this account, they started taking out $10,000 a week. The 1 week, because when you make a big withdrawal, you just have to have an explanation. They were like, I'm going to buy a trailer. The next week, they're going to buy a new truck, huge truck on Craigslist. Mm-hmm. I mean, totally legitimate claims on these withdrawals. 5 withdrawals later, the bank contacts this woman, and they say, what's going on? And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, well, all these withdrawals you've been making. And she's like, well, I needed the cash. I told you why I was taking the cash out, because I have to write the explanation. And they're like, well, most people use checks. They don't use cash. And it became quite invasive quite quick. They even said, are you part of a scam? And they started questioning her what she was doing with her own money. So.
Yeah, we're at the end here, and having gold or silver, if you do, that's non-traceable. But where we're moving, especially with the wallets, all the Bitcoin wallets, we'll use Bitcoin as the example because they want to have KYC on a private wallet. So let's say you're holding your own wallet. You bought like a Trezor and you want to take it off of an exchange and put it on. Now they want to know who owns every private wallet in the world. See, this is getting super invasive also in the crypto space. So these are the little signs that are leading to something is not right if they're really starting to go after so much to know who has everything and every penny's accounted for across the planet. And that's something doesn't sit right, Diamond. It really doesn't. It's very similar to what happened in the 1930s before the gold confiscation. And, after all these changes economically, the only way out of it is conflict. So we're in the monetary shifting phase. There's going to be a lot of angry people out there. And especially, I'm telling you, everybody out there, I'm really, this is my analysis. If the SEC suspends trading on GameStop and all the individual investors are lose, that will be the catalyst that's going to roll over everything for all the change, not the politics. Because all those millions of people are going to get fleeced from the federal government getting fleeced because they're individual investors in there. That's going to do it. Yeah. That is going to do it. Game will be over at that point. You're going to see shenanigans and crazy things once that money stops and you irk those people to no end and you stole their money in a legal framework. I thought it was supposed to be an open market price discovery. Oh, the little guys are making too much money. We got to stop and steal their money and bankrupt them. Fleece that all over into the Wall Street thing again.
It's disgusting.
Transfer of wealth wasn't good enough for the COVID to close everybody's businesses and move all that money into the corporate fives. You can go shopping in Walmart. You can't go to your local store. It's a smart little bug that thing is. And I love how in the restaurants too, it doesn't jump on you if you're sitting at your table. But as soon as you stand up and you walk across the restaurant, oh, it's deadly in there, man. So this whole fleecing of the public of all the wealth anyway is enough. It's already pushed everybody. We're like 1/5 of 1/8 of an inch away from have you been watching what's going on in India with the farmers and the crazy stuff up at Agra and everything in the Red Fort yesterday? Oh my. Yeah. That's where we're going, Diamond, in this country if SEC stops and bankrupts everybody out of the GameStop play.
All right, well, DuByne, I know you have a radio show coming up. You want to share with our listeners?
No, Diamond, I had the What day is today? Today's Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the wrong night. I thought it was Thursday already.
Oh, it's Mini Ice Age Conversations?
It's not, yeah, it's tomorrow night at 10 p.m. to midnight on Revolution Radio. I had the wrong day.
Oh, I thought it was Wednesdays. I was convinced too.
Oh, I thought today was Thursday.
Okay.
I'm a day off. I've been living out here in a cabin, and I do my videos, I do my research. Like I say, I'm working on the land a lot during the days, and I just kind of get in the groove of being back in nature. I've cleared a bunch of stuff, some paths and things, looking for the plants that I can retransplant, especially, these muscadine vines. I'm searching for all this. And I just really kind of tuning out of the news and that whole cycle of push and pull on the emotions, touching back into nature quite a bit. But at the same time, just surfing in my very narrow category enough to get me the news that I need to try to do videos. That's why we're really going to these ancient history videos here with the Cherokee Nations and the more ancient sites in East Tennessee, because I'm more resonating in the more ancient past and this type of thing than I am trying to jump into the modern news, because hands in the soil and just getting off and just getting away from all that madness and touching trees and things. I lost track of time. I really don't even know what day it is. just out here doing my thing. Yeah.
So what's happened on your property as far as fruit trees? I know we touched on that earlier. When are they coming, and how many are you planting?
Well, I got 16 of these trees called pawpaw, and they're not a commercial variety. Some nurseries have them. They're local. It's kind of a cylindrical fruit, and it's got a sweet, sour taste to it. So I got 16 of those, but they're small. They're only about a foot tall, and I'm going to have to wait several years for those to bear fruit. But because I was registered with the forest, if you have over 15 acres in Tennessee, you can get on the green belt here, like everybody does it. So the forest department will allow you to order through them bare root trees that are coming. So I have 250 trees of different varieties. Vines also have different berries. So I have a whole gamut of things. I got plums coming, apples, cherries, persimmons, and I'm going to try my luck with a couple peach trees. So between that should be enough for trading, enough for canning, enough to make alcohol and distill that out like schnapps, apple schnapps, cherry schnapps, different types of things. And then also be able to trade that for other food, because people will trade fruit for food. Yeah. And getting into the dehydrator, be able to dehydrate that and then save it in a different form as well to be able to trade. Because again, the money thing is one thing. I'm trying to go beyond money at the moment to just strictly thinking about what I can grow around to trade for something else. Because I think the money system as we know it is coming to some sort of conclusion and then reformation, and whatever form that takes, I'm not sure. But the signs are everywhere. I mean, if you don't see something wrong with the monetary system, maybe I don't know.
Well,
maybe not looking closely enough across a broader array of different indices.
We could just talk about cycles in general. Fiat monies never last more than 250 years based on every cyclic pattern. The average fiat currency lasts 150 to 230 years, with the trending average to 180 years, meaning our fiat currency is decades past its demise, so they can't keep it going along much longer, especially with the tens of trillions of dollars in debt and the fact that they're just printing money like it's going out of style. So that's going to drive inflation. And with all this inflationary shift and the printing of money, all that printed money is going right into crypto. So they're losing their shirt there at the the banks. The international banks are being crushed because their money doesn't exist once it becomes crypto. It gets out of their hands. So they're literally driving the end of fiat currency. And all historical documents dating back thousands of years show that you need 4 skills. You need to know how to grow food. That's number 1. You need how to grow tobacco. That's not food. That's pesticide and tradables that everyone wants because it's addictive, it's enjoyable, and it's relaxing. And that's money. And then you have to have a distiller to learn how to make alcohol out of your excess crop and grain. which is another tradable commodity. It's also an antiseptic. It's used in surgery and on and on. It has practical purposes all over the gamut. So those are the top three. And what's the fourth one, in your opinion, that I'm hiding? So we got food, tobacco, and distilling alcohol. Number 4.
Medical skills and EMT trauma, but I mean, that's one thing, but how about construction, be it woodworking so you could repair, like just general repair, jack of all trades. I don't know. There's so many things that could be number 4. What do you enlighten us?
Well, I think it's wild harvesting, and that is local to all regions. And that means being able to harvest not only animals, but plants. Plants are the most important wild harvestable, because in a place like yours in Zone 7A, you have plants that emerge in February and March in the forests. These are exotic plants and fern fiddles and things that are just delicious edibles. And you can wild harvest all the way through October and November where you live. So there's only a few months you can't find food in your forest. But in those few limited months in Zone 7A, you have deer and squirrel and all kind of other creatures that are walking around at night. If you have a flashlight, you're guaranteed to have food. Not only that, if you can bait them in a grid down scenario, you can literally just have the bait there, a little alarm, you turn on the flashlight, and boom, you have dinner. So learning how to be completely sustainable without growing food, without having tobacco or a distiller, and that's wild harvesting, I think that's the most important skill.
Yeah, surveying the property too. I had a chance to survey it for the last, 5 months before it went dormant and all the leaves fell off everything coming into winter. So I had an approximate idea, remembering where all the muscadine pines were, and where there's an enormous amount of mushrooms anyway. So waiting for the morels to pop up here in the spring. Just kind of have a general area, and I'm trying to get a couple tons of Angus beef cow dung, because I want to spread that all through the forest floor, and you never know what's going to come out of that because I know where the real moist spots are, where there's always mushrooms up there. So what is tradable? The conversation we're having here, it's about think beyond money. Because, they kind of trapped us over this statism, where you're born into a country and you're a statist, right? Like, that's a whole brainwash thing too. Never forget the global citizen, NWO, and all this kind of stuff. Way beyond that. I mean, we live on one planet. But, the way that the statism thing is, okay, that's fine. But then come over to money. You'd never know any other system that didn't exist except for money. Like, we've been brainwashed. Now, we do want us to use the word correctly. Indoctrinated and brainwashed into only one way of thinking: money. That's it. I mean, how many people do you think that really know how to barter? I bet way less than even a fraction of 1%. We've all been brought up on money is it, money's ass. So let's try to think in a completely different way of trading something compared to buying it to get the same thing and the same value. But what do you have around your area to get the thing you want?
A good thing people can be doing right now, if they want to take some of the money out of the bank, and if they already have precious metals, that would be to buy ammunition. Because if you're not a homesteader or a prepper, you may not be aware that ammunition holds value. In an area where I live, like Pagosa, people have been stockpiling ammunition their whole life. And let's say they fall on hard times. They can take 10 or 20 boxes of their 9mm or their 226 or whatever they have. They could bring it down to our local pawn shop, and he buys it on a stock price, bullet per bullet, like 9mm. He gives 29 cents a bullet. And in trading and homesteading, 9mm is currently trading at 50 cents a bullet. So they hold their value. Ammunition holds its value, and it's a tradable commodity that's going to be in limited supply in a grid down scenario. So, and it doesn't cost a lot to stockpile a box of shotgun shells. It's like $12 at Walmart. So you can be buying this ammunition, even if you don't have a weapon, to trade with your neighbor, because they may need it. So I think that buying bullets, buying shotgun shells, an excellent way to store your money safely, and also to protect your family if you have those weapons. And that's one thing that Leah, my partner, has been focusing on. She's been buying some interesting guns on Gun Trader. with interesting calibers where there is a large amount of that ammunition available. These may be older guns from the 30s, like in the 7mm range, 765, and really exotic calibers, but there's a lot of that ammunition around. So not only do we get a fantastic German Mauser that's worth thousands of dollars, that's highly accurate at 100 yards, we can also buy thousands of rounds of ammunition for less than 80 cents a round. When a common gun you get from Walmart today, like a 30-06 or the 308, you're paying $2 up to $4 per bullet. And people just don't know how to get around that. So that's why I'm sharing that information.
Yeah, and then also you can think about the firearms that you hold that cross swap, because you talk about the caliber. Some calibers are, they fit across multiple ranges there. So, and again, the 12 gauge, if you're going to go for any of the shotgun shells, go for the 12 gauge. That's mainly what's around. I'm sure you can get some 20 gauge around, but almost all the stuff that I've seen around hunting, at least in Tennessee, almost everybody's 12 gauge down here. Almost everybody. I mean, there are some 20 gauge, but predominantly 12s. So the thing you're probably going to find too, if you go buy one on a shotgun, is going to be a 12 gauge. So 12 gauge shells, man, those are the best. And again, they are running real low and they're limiting like one box per person. It's real hard to get ammo these days. And I was just reading some on Zero Hedge where they were saying that there's even more of a shortage inbound right now, where it's going to be nigh impossible to get that here marching forward into the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Don't know who is causing it or what's buying it, but it's getting taken off the shelf at an institutional level where there's really nothing left for the public.
Yeah, well, 7 million new guns have been sold since the beginning of the pandemic to people who have never had guns. That means they have no ammunition. And I'm sure that's putting huge pressure on the people that have guns that now want to stockpile it. They can't get any of it. So it's a whole new group of people looking for the ammunition. And now that they know some of the information I shared, that it holds value, maybe it'll even be harder. That's why now is more important than ever to get the preps you need as far as guns and ammo. Because with the Biden administration, it's anyone's guess what will be the future.
Yeah, and being right at the end of the banking system era here, once that goes, your access to almost everything that you want to prep out goes with that. And, we do have a functional system at the moment, although it's been tried and there were shortages appearing in the whole pandemic thing. But remember, the SARS-3 is coming up, planned already. They told you there's a version coming out. So what's that all about? Another supply chain breakdown. And I'm of the volition here, now hear me out for a second, that governments around the world know these changes are coming. 2024 in October is the date you want to set on your calendar. That'll be the most earth change that we'll see. Now think about it in terms of earth change. We're talking about slippage on the crust, a lot of like sinkholes forming, and an enormous amount of landslides, sinkholes, and crustal, like I wouldn't say ripping, but I would say displacement, enough where bridges are going to start unhinging and a lot of things are going to come undone, pipes, etc. So governments of the world know this, and this big distraction out here is going to continue to increase. I am saying that by the end of the year, we're going to start to see some limited rationing in the country, in the United States. And as we move forward into 2024, there's going to be more and more limited availability for everything that you buy, because governments will just simply come out and say, hey, it's rationing because, you couldn't get the seeds, you couldn't get that, whatever. The bank broke down, there's monetary system, supply chains over here, we're at war with this country, whatever. So when the rationing comes in, all that is a rediversion of the availability of everything for continuity of government. So the closer we get toward the edge of things going completely off the rails in terms of earth changes that are really going to affect and have begun to affect our society, when you hear the word rationing coming in any country, continent, that is at the point where governments have said, all right, we've reached the point where the citizens have gotten all they're going to get. Because from this point forward, we're going to scrape the extra 30% that usually would have gone to the populace, and we're going to take it over for continuity government. Now, we're just going to say rationing. But really, is it truly a shortage, or was it a fake shortage to create the rationing? So let's say you have 100 of something, 100 units, and 50 units were for the general public, and then 50 units generally the government would take and do whatever they do with for, there's a million things they could do in terms of keeping themselves running. Well, suddenly there's rationing. the populace only gets 20. Now, what happened to the other 30? Is it truly a real deficit situation, or was it fictitious in the news, as we've seen so much fake narrative going around? Say there's a shortage, rationing. Where does that extra 30% go? Oh, it's going to go for continuity of government, taken off the shelf for the individuals. So we're right at the cusp of it all happening. So the more you can get during this time, I just wish I had more money too, because there's an enormous amount of more things I want to get. But will you ever be ready to do 100%? No, because there's always that next thing you can get. So you're going to be as ready as you are, and your community is going to be as ready as it is, and you're just going to have to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree with you more, because each and every time we prepare more and more, we need to prepare more and more. We have 2 underground facilities that we're building here. Those aren't going to be in ground for several months, but once those are in and those are stocked, guess what? We're going to need more underground greenhouses. We're going to need walapinis. We're going to need to expand our growth. We're going to need more hoop houses. And then when we think about, like, what if we need to feed the neighbors? We're going to need more space. And then when the grid does go down, we're going to need to increase output. We're going to need to increase labor. And we're going to need to implement that immediately by bringing in some of that help with the people that are sitting idle that don't know what to do. So we have to have organizing skills. We have to have communication skills. You have to have the ability to negotiate. These are things that the general public does not know how to do. Now, thankfully, people like you and I that work in public spheres, we communicate with thousands of people over the last several years. We know how to fake it till we make it. We know how to change our persona. We know how to use downtones. We know how to be, specific. We know how to ask the right questions. The general public doesn't know that. My background in fundraising gives me the skills and advantages to change the minds of people based on how I'm speaking to them. And so these are skills the general public doesn't have, and you're going to want to be with a group that has all of these skills. So it's very important for you to have a plan on where you're going to go, where you're going to bug out, who you're going to hang out with. And if you don't have a plan like that, you should be very scared, in my opinion. What say you?
Well, when people start arriving at your doorstep too, it's not like they're just going to sit around and watch TV and hang out for free like in their old life. It's got to be very clear. You come in here, you're going to work. There's a list of tasks, and it's already like standard operating procedure. You already know what you need to do. Here's the task. Everybody's got tasks you got to go around, because it's going to require a lot more human labor hours to keep that production coming in. And you're right. The more people come in, the more that you're going to need to produce. And nobody rides for free. You know, I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to go hang out at this survival place, and I might go help out in the garden a little bit. The rest of the time it's going to be like swinging in a hammock in an organic farm. It'll be real cool, man. It's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be from morning to night, you doing things to try to keep the community going. And whether that be repairing things, woodworking, you know, there's going to be an enormous amount of things that need to be done. Are you going to want to go out with whatever you grew and then down to the next town by yourself? Of course not. You're going to go with people, and that's going to take a whole day to go there and back, because probably if you're at that point, petrol's not going to be available to the point it is today, and it's going to take you much longer to do things, and you're just going to have to accept that the ease of flipping a switch and having everything done is just, we're going to step back into more of a pioneering lifestyle like Lee talks about. He always used that key phrase that I remember, the pioneering lifestyle, because that's kind of where it's going to go back. Now, luckily for me, I'm up near a couple Amish communities, and I get a chance to delve into that world for a little bit, and most people are not ready to go to that level yet. But if you get thrust into that level, you got to, like the organization skills, Dom, you're right. Like everybody's got to know already that there's at least some plan. Because if you come into a community and they're so totally disorganized, they don't know what they're doing, that is not a good, somebody's going to try to take it over and whatnot. But if there's already organization there and everybody's got tasks and it's already kind of a smooth working machine, they're going to come in and feel a lot better about what's already in place and who to listen to and that sort of thing. Remember, there's a hierarchy there. Whoever starts it, it's theirs. You're freeloading basically coming in because you didn't prepare enough. Right. And then you want to get something for free and try to make rules and things. No. Well, you listen to the rules, you do the work, out, man. It doesn't matter. You go find another place. No, don't let us. We can't. We have children. Now, how much of this is going to be going on too? You know, when it gets weird, it's going to get real weird. So get prepared for weird. Yeah. And when I say weird, I'm talking people are going to do things that you didn't think they would ever do.
Right. And so the first thing you have to look out about is if you're not in a rural area, it's for people stealing your stuff. That happens for the first several months until most of those people get shot. But I live in a rural area. So here's how we're going to roll it out here. If there is a long-term grid down scenario where there's no more communication, and I know it wholeheartedly, we're going to gather the local posse down here, which includes an ex-detective, a sheriff, other local law enforcement, and the rest of the militia on our road. And we are going to ride a bunch of horses into town, maybe some vehicles to show our power with our petrol that we have in supply. And we're going to take it at 4 miles an hour up the road. It's going to take about 3.5 hours to get to town, maybe 4. When we get there, we're going to be right in the center of town. We'll shoot up a few shots up in the air and light a big fire, and a crowd will gather. And we are going to tell them that we are there to help them. And we're going to describe to them what our capabilities are. We have blacksmiths. We have carpenters and woodworkers. We have electricians in every skilled profession. We know how to gather and harvest solar energy, microhydro. Most importantly, we want to teach you how to grow food. And not only that, we've already started growing food for everyone in the town. So what we're going to do is come back tomorrow with food to barter with you. And you need to bring goods and supplies that you have that you may not need to barter with us. And we are going to have this contingent of firearms with us for the entire time because we need to be protected. It's not for fear or to scare you. It's for our own protection because we're here to help you. And we know that there are people desperate out there and we need to protect our infrastructure. If you're with us, we want you to join us. So follow us back tonight. And we will get a few people that are willing to follow us back that night. And that will attach the families in the town to our community immediately. And then we start to build that community network that we need of security. Because the number one thing you need in a grid down scenario is security from the crazy individuals that will threaten you. And this is going to last for quite some time, several months, until the people know they have to either get along or they will not be allowed. And it's like the Wild West for a little bit, but using that model, I think that you can exert enough force while instilling enough, it's basically inspiration for the future. If we're all willing to get along, we have already set up the infrastructure to make it happen. So if you want to help, please join us tonight. And I guarantee in that scenario, we will have a huge amount of the community that follows us back to the area that we're sitting and begins to help the rebuilding process.
Yeah, especially, if you don't know how long that will last, everybody's going to kind of be in the same boat of, well, how long is this going to last? If you look through history, most conflicts and kind of conflagrations and things that just break apart into a million pieces, you're looking at about 4 to 5 years on the average of a de-evolution until some sort of normalcy returns that can be built upon that. Some of the longer instances might be 7 years. Now, whether it be, I'll use the example down there in Cambodia, after Pol Pot took power and then they had the whole, revolution thing and the whole killing fields down there and whatever, the society did reset itself, but under a different set of rules where some stability came back in there and, went through that tumultuous period. And, that's kind of one of the good modern examples to, not in good, but a good representation of what you could expect in a de-evolution, to the point where a different system's trying to be installed on top of the existing system. And that could be everything from economy to politics and everything in between, electrical systems and whatever. They're trying to push this garbage New Deal here where everything's going to go on green energy, but they don't understand that, semi-tractor trailers need diesel to run down the roads to deliver your food and whatnot. But these kind of tumultuous times is not going to be forever. It's not going to be. Now, whatever assumes government reforms out of that and, something will get stable again. Now, whether the new form you like it or you don't like it, that's a different story. But in this whole, like you call it the flux time, everything in flux, where there's really no stability, no really knowns, except everything's unknown, like, oh, I'm just glad I survived today kind. That'll usually last, we'll give it an average 5 years. But then after that, it should get more stable again because people will find the opportunity. And, opportunity breeds solutions. And, whatever's happening, it will fix itself at some point. But the new replacement for the old system is, well, we've seen that go awry a fair few times in history too. But it does get more stable under a new regime. But it's just maybe not the regime you want, and maybe they're not the kind of people they want you in their society. And nothing's forever. Let's just say that.
Well, I couldn't say it better myself. We've reached almost the end of the hour. Is there anything else that we might want to discuss moving forward?
Yeah, I would like to get your take too on one last thing here. Like, what are the signs that we're looking for before we're coming to sort of a breakdown situation? My whole thing is if they really do stop out all these individual traders to let the Wall Street make their money off on these, SEC or the New York Stock Exchange. Remember all these things people are talking about? It's not on the NASDAQ; it's over on the NYSE. So, I think that's going to be a major sign. If you see that go down, that's for me is going to be like the hugest red flag that something's getting real close to collapse here. So what are you seeing? Give us what's your sign to look for, or signs plural, that something's about to go awry? Because like I say, I don't believe it's going to be an instant thing and everybody's going to be caught 1,000% off guard. And they're like, what happened? There's going to be a bunch of leading up to it steps, and once you see these steps in play, events, whatever you want to call them, then you know that you're getting pretty close. So give me your idea of what those might be or what you see in the future.
Well, 2 years ago, I made my prediction. I put out a graphic. I said the end of destruction. It included the cosmic catastrophe, the ongoing magnetic reversal, and society, all in one graph. And the way I see it rolling out, it still hasn't changed for me. 2021, 2023. From 2021 to 2023, we're going to see the sun ramping up into cycle 25, as it already has. We're going to see more threats to the grid as the sun becomes more active and shoots solar flares, CMEs, and potential plasma filaments towards us. Within 2 years, now to 2023, we're guaranteed a very high C, M, or X flare. And that's going to start some minor perturbations. And I've always said the same thing from the beginning of the channel since I started 5 years ago. It was that this will not be a sudden event. It's going to be rolling out. You're going to get used to each additional step. We've already got the rationing. You can only get one, alcohol in the store. You can only get one toilet paper. You can only get one of that. It's only going to ramp up there in the stores. And then as the grid starts to fail, as the sun wakes up, our magnetosphere has waned now 7% since the last solar max. So even minor perturbations in the high C range, David, if it's directly Earth-facing, will literally take out a city for a few hours. People are going to get scared. There's going to be robberies. So it's going to ramp up like that. Then there's going to be a major outage for 3 months in Missouri or Canada. And that's going to create looting. And then a police state up there. And then it will grow and then Beijing in 2023 is going to have a major blackout. And there's going to be riots and a war in the city. And then they're going to be martial law and shutdowns. So it's going to be a growing effect until the big shot from the sun in 2023 potentially takes out a third of the planet for a year or more. And that is when it's going to unroll. and it's my supposition that prior to all that, so in the next year or so, there's going to be a financial reset. It could be as easy as early as this summer or as late as next spring. But people should be worried about their financials, their 401ks, their retirement plans, and how they hold their money. Maybe they want to buy property. Maybe they want to get into precious metal. Maybe they want to take some of that cash out and bury it in a can and put it in the backyard. So that's leading up to the 2023 date. And I don't see that this society, the one we're living in globally, moves forward past 2024 without the global reset. So it's my opinion that the global reset happens in the flexure point between 2022 and 23. and it's based on grid failures and police state and a breakdown of society, and we just can't get along, and so we have to control everybody. And then by then it's too late. You've lost all your money. You're compliant if you're in a major city. You're living off the teat of the government. You have your ration stamps, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, people like you and I in rural communities, we're not even interfacing with that garbage because they already have 80% of the population complicit in their bullshit. They're not coming to get us. They don't have enough infrastructure. And we're building our supply chains, our networks, and that when the lights go off, click, in 2 years, we're ready. And we are the ones that rebuild from the outside in.
Yeah, it's interesting because your mark is, and my mark on the time is only 1 year off. So for me, following this second magnetic field forming out in the outer solar system. So for those of you on a quick 101 lesson here, the planets in the outer solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, those Jovians out there, they only come into this particular alignment that forms almost a perfect square. And when I say when you look out into the outer solar system, it is a square of the way the planets are lining up. Only happens once every 2,000 years, and the last time was 79 AD. Now, this is going to be occurring in October of 2024. Now, this is going to create its own new slight magnetic field as these things interloop on each other and have their own torus wave creating.
Wait a minute, David.
Yeah.
If you just rotate that square, isn't it a diamond?
Oh, it is. And if we do it, it's an upside-down pyramid with an owl in the center of it.
Boom!
Because if you go up to the Big Chi up there in the Big Dipper, if you go behind one of the stars up there, you come into the Owl Nebula. Yeah, because you got when this thing turns into a diamond glowing, no, it'll be a square out there. Now you got to think how the Sumerians counted from the planet C, and this is the thing not a lot of people are talking about. So you're always thinking like, oh, it's a magnetic field. It's way out near Jupiter. It's way out near Saturn. It's whatever. It's way out in the outer solar system. But wait, those are all going to start magnetically interlooping on themselves in a new torus wave to create its own slight torrid magnetic field out there. But count like the Sumerians, out inward. So we only got Mars and then Earth. So the new magnetic field is only going to be 2 planets away. But then you're in all these changes we're all been talking about. Then we got Mercury, Venus, Earth, the 3rd planet in. So with the new magnetic field out there, we're the 2nd planet coming in off that field. And then here we sit on the Earth, we're the 3rd planet coming off the magnetic field. So those 2 toroids are going to start looping in on themselves. And something magnificent, I look at it as magnificence. And planetary geology, and you might want to call it plasma geology or whatever, something incredible is about to happen to this planet. And everybody is going to be witness to it. And that will be a reset in itself. Governments will not function after that point. They will not. What we're about to witness in the heavens and on the earth here is going to be something, once in a 2,000-year event. But history has been so muddied with false narratives and, Victor writing the history. We don't even know what happened 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. So
in the skies.
What
reset everything. And we're coming into it again. So you're 1 year away from me, but we're looking at it in the same exact thing here. Something from the solar system is going to create different situation on our planet here.
Well, let me just bring into the forefront some of the mythological and historical information to corroborate what you're saying. Now, first, I want to go to astronomy and planetary geology. And I want to point out one thing that's very important, Mr. DuByne, and that's the fact that these gas giants that we've all been taught in grade school up through college, the gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, those are all stars in the off position. They're not terrestrial planets. Gas giants are stars that have been turned off. Now, here's the interesting thing, because I think laymen can understand this. Jupiter is the brightest object in the night sky except for the moon and the sun, and sometimes Venus. I think they switch places. But let's just get to Jupiter. Jupiter, its output, when you calculate it using astrophysics, is 2.1 to 2.3 times its actual solar reflectivity. Now, what that means is that Jupiter is still a sun, and it is producing 120% more light than it's reflecting from the star, our sun. So something's happening on Jupiter that's causing it to glow in a low mode. So theoretically, we could call Jupiter a brown dwarf sun. Same with Saturn, same with Neptune, and same with Uranus. So when these gas giants come together, think about it. When you stack one magnet and click another one to it, that magnetic field increases not just twofold, fourfold. It's exponential. And you click another one on it, it exponentially increases ever more. So the same effect that you're describing could potentially be happening in our solar system during this alignment. There could be some type of toroidal flow in the magnetic fields that connect them together and make them expand and even kick them up a little higher in their glow mode. And the Greeks talked about the dog days of summer. And a lot of people think this is because of Sirius rising over the horizon late in the afternoon. And maybe Sirius was glowing a little hotter, so it was acting as another sun. But it could be one of the planets. Could it be Jupiter or Saturn that was rising? I think it was Saturn. I think Saturn was our original sun, as many of the mythologies say. It's moved away, but it still comes on from time to time. And so maybe the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction allows these gas giants to reignite and to reheat the planet, and maybe even bringing a golden age. But before the golden age is cosmic catastrophe, and after the golden age is cosmic catastrophe. So it's all speculation where it's leading us to, and it's very, very exciting times to be alive. Even if we're all potentially going to perish in a catastrophe, many of us, a large percentage of us on Earth live. And it will be those that are prepared to live through these times that will make it. So it's a very exciting time to live for science, for humanity, because the society that we have created worldwide, there are billions of people. A quarter of us are starving. Over 65% of the people in the richest nation where I live, in my city, are undernourished. We're doing something wrong, and we need a reset, in my opinion.
Yeah, and again, you're really following what's that? 2017 C, the blue comet coming in that'll arrive at the winter solstice of 2022. I mean, that's going to freak a lot of people out anyway, with that glowing blue comet coming through that'll be visible during the daylight hours, and then when it comes visible in the evening, and it really has that giant blue disk out there moving each evening. That's going to unnerve a lot of people. I mean, we're kind of, you're right, we are at the edge of our civilization as we understand it right now. So when they talk about the Great Reset and Schwab and all these guys, they're following the cycles of the heavens as well. I mean, they're following it. They know what it is. They're trying to explain it in a drip feed mode. We are at a reset. We're at a total reset of the planets dictating, as above, so below, what's about to happen here. And would you really tell the global populace and come out and tell them, Diamond, you and I, we come out and do it, try to get people prepared, but would 8 billion people be able to wrap their head around it, and would they behave? And then would they try to work together in communities and get ready, or would they just be like, there's no more rule of law, it's all going to collapse anyway, and a party like it's 1999 and take out people with them?
Yeah,
I just don't know how people would react to it.
Well, that's why they don't do it, because there's too many people. Back in the earlier eras, okay, the Mayan gods, the Aztec gods, those were the leaders. They knew this information, so they could use the information to influence the small communities, right? The Romans, they used the same information. That was passed on to the Vatican. They used the same information in the 1500s, the 500s. And now we are with the global cabal, the Illuminati, whoever you want to call them. These are the same groups of people with the same information, passing it down time immemorial. We're now entering the sixth sun, right? According to the Mayans. It's the fourth sun according to the Aztecs. And I don't know what sun according to the Chinese or any of those people. But they all knew about the cycle. They knew about the pattern. And now it's been passed to the Vatican, and now it's the Illuminati, which is a world control. The Vatican controlled the world first. That was the first world control, I think, maybe 1500, that we know about. And that's continued today with this new Illuminati control, which is not the Bilderbergs. They're the lower level, but they're the ones implementing the plan because it's in their financial interest to listen to the higher ups because they gain all the money and we suffer.
Yeah, we'll call them globalists. That word Illuminati has a lot of that conspiracy theory around that. That's been set up as such as a trigger word.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these trigger words that you hear. Bigfoot, instead of saying bipedal hominid, oh, Bigfoot, people turn off. You say bipedal hominid, and they go, really, what's that? But there's trigger words that are placed out. UFO, people go, oh, UFO, come on, man. Like through history, think about the last 30 years, how many trigger words there are. There's one word that you say out in public discourse and everybody just turns their head and like, oh, he's one of those people. That was purposely set up through the lexicon there to do such a thing, turn people off from wanting to hear the information. And those things are purposely put out there to do that. So these globalists, whatever you like to call them, I'm wondering what they think about our channel, because they watch. And how do they figure out, like, how do these guys sit there and learn all this stuff about the planets? And that's only supposed to be for the secret club guys, but these people who aren't involved in that are figuring it out too, like, what's up with that?
Okay, my mic is off.
I hear you, Mike. I hear you.
I had a mic displacement. Yeah, let's talk about Bigfoot real quick. And what was the term you used?
Bipedal hominid.
Well, here's a funny thing. I just did a quick little bit of research on Homo sapiens sapien. And, since the beginning, let's go back 3.2 million years to the oldest bipedal hominids. We're talking Australopithecus. Since then, since 3 million years ago, we've had over 8 different species of bipedal hominids interacting on Earth. Except today, the last 40,000 years is the only time we're the only bipedal hominid. So what I have to say to that is they're probably wrong. That there are other bipedal hominids still on Earth based on science and what we know. And every year we discover hundreds of new species that couldn't exist. And yet we claim that we're the only bipedal hominid on Earth with evidence of other bipedal hominids that may not just be Bigfoot. I mean, we have, ice people and forest people and little people and all other types of people that have been seen. Lizard people and creepy stuff that walk around on 2 legs, right? From Florida to Canada to South America to Russia. There has to be more bipedal hominids. The problem is that the fossil record is so incomplete that humans are so complicit in listening to the mainstream media and fake science that we think that it's our fault that the climate changes. How embarrassing is that the whole planet has been taught that we control the climate when the sun rises and falls every day and changes the temperature 30 degrees everywhere. Yet people have been duped in thinking it's their fault. It's not the sun that comes up and down that changes the temperature on Earth. It's you. So, we've gone so far into the shithole, I don't even know if we can recover without this reset. And the reset will allow us to reteach the people the real facts, the way to live in harmony with life, like the Native Americans. And it might be a little dirtier, but it's certainly a lot healthier for us and the planet.
Yeah, the nerve to think that one species, can control this planet. Have you been around the planet to see how vast this place is? And really the changes, the cataclysm, searching back through history and looking at the amount of cataclysms that have come and gone, the resets across every eon of the apex of science, technology, mathematics, economy, whatever, they've always been wiped out and scratched back to zero. And nobody ever asked the simple question, what's the mechanism that causes a reset every time since like 8,000 BC? Like we see it, these civilizations come up, they got an 8.2K event and wipes them out. And then they come back up again and we get that massive blowback in 4,000 BC. And then we come out, and why is it in the more modern era, it's about every 400 years that we see the wipeouts and the resets? What caused Rome? Yeah, you could say the debasement of currency, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't have gone quietly into the night if it weren't something else. It's always something else. and look and see how many times in these greatest of kingdoms from Mesopotamia, Harappa, these are the ones going further back that you might know in the history books, the Sumerians and Babylonians and whatnot, the Hittites and Assyrians and that whole crew there. But then you go over into Harappa and that whole Indus Valley cradle of civilization. Like these great societies rose up and they all collapsed. And you ask, why did they all collapse? That's the question nobody's asking. Because it surely wasn't because they just overextended their systems. All of them, that's the same excuse they use for every collapse. Oh, they overextended their system. Well, you think by now, over 8,000 years, somebody would have got it where they wouldn't have overextended their system. But nobody's immune from these resets. Well, in history, none. And we are next, now.
And this is in
the next 3 years.
This is the beautiful part. This is where I became enamored with you, and I said, I have to know who this guy is. I mean, I thought you were a schmuck 7 years ago when I first found you, because you're talking about stuff that I'm trying to corroborate as a scientist, right? I'm in a scientific mind 7 years ago, a little bit on the cusp of conspiracy theory. I know the proxy data, the GSM-2. I've been looking at it. There's no good explanation. And here is this guy on the internet. He's telling me he used to sell coffee, and he's showing all these Chinese dynasties that fall according to my GSM-2 data. And I'm like, who is this guy? He has no formal training in the fields I'm in. He's trading coffee, and he's got the answers. And plus that, your title up on your YouTube was like Myanmar living. So I thought you were some kind of like a travel guy trying to sell shit. And I was like, who is this guy? And I started to listen to you, and you were the missing part. And I started listening to other people. The fact that we've been divided as scientists by compartmentalizing our specialties over the last 3 to 5 decades has eliminated any kind of actual scientific endeavor with enlightenment and discovery from the human public. And so because of the advent of the internet, the late 90s, the early 2000s, we have been able to discover people around the world and come together and uncover these mysteries while people watch it in real time. People have been watching your channel and my channel, have been enlightened so much. It's changed their lives. David, I can't tell you how many dozens of people, entire families around the world, they send me emails every year. They have changed their entire life. They listen to you and I. They went and checked out the sources. They quit their job. They moved into the rural areas. They're prepared. And then the events that have happened in recent years, they thank me tenfold. They can't thank me enough. They want to meet me. They want to do this and that. And I don't want anything in return. The reason I do this is because it's my purpose on earth. I was given this message from the heavens 10 years ago. They said, Diamond, this is your purpose. And ever since I started doing it, I've never been unhappy a day in my life. It's absolutely what I want to do. It's exhausting. I mean, come on. And then the homesteading aspect, which you're now getting into, that makes it exhausting even more everfold. But it's rewarding. And in the end, we are going to be ready for anything.
Yeah, I like your opening comment. I've been called a lot worse. When you were even saying that, I was like, that's on the easy end of things. You know, when I first came out with that, and after talking with John Casey and getting to know him a little bit more, and really doing a bunch of research before I asked questions, and that whole coffee buying time really threw me for a loop up there. But the thing that really got me was they had talked about when the English were growing coffee in the late 1860s up into, say, the 1880s, that their grandfathers, and we're talking like old timers up there that were in the coffee biz, like those guys, their families had talked about the freeze events that occurred in the late 1800s. And he's like, yeah, my grandfather, and these guys are like, in their 70s, saying that their grandfather or great grandfather talked of these events. And I was like, man, that's not what I heard. I heard it's global warming. Al Gore, didn't you know? You living in the bush, you don't know anything. I'm like, it really threw me off, because he's like, yeah, all this, because when we were buying the coffee, the bean density, and that's one thing you really need to look at if you're going to go into a roaster. A lot of people are roasting coffee, and about the density of the beans was off, and they were given a discount because the bean density had these, when it's growing, if the plant gets frozen for several days in a deep freeze, the pockets of water inside the beans freeze into microspherules, or little round pockets, and then they damage the bean. I mean, they don't damage it where it's unusable. What they do is they create those water pockets that freeze into ice in the bean. And then when it does unfreeze, well, it leaves that space and it doesn't like grow itself and reform in there and create a solid bean again. Get those gaps in there. And so roasters have a very specific profile and temperature roasting. And because we were able to buy some of that off batch, if you will, because it wasn't the right density a lot of people were looking for. But if you knew what the density was, you could roast on that. And that set my whole world apart. I was like, what is going on with this thing here? You guys are getting freezing in Burma. That's Myanmar now, Burma. Freezing events in the coffee farms up there. And we're like, what? And it really like tweaked me enough to where I thought the same thing, you know, there's way more going on here. So I get those same kind of emails, and I'm super happy I do too, because I don't want anything in return. I just want my piece of land out here, other people to help and, you know, prepare and stay and get prepared together. And that's it, because we're all in this together. There's nowhere to run. We're not going to hide anywhere. There's no magic spot to be where you're going to outrun this thing. You're not. You're going to live through it, and we're going to live through it all together. And the more prepared people there are, the better it's going to be for all of us. And that's the way I was thinking when I first started that channel. Like, damn, more people got to understand this stuff, because we're all going to go rolling through this.
Shut up!
Way easier with millions of people prepared than it would be with tens of thousands, you know?
Shut up, Al.
I'll leave it there. But thanks for the compliment. I didn't put
Al,
a kind one on the backside there.
Yeah.
Like,
Al's in his,
being crazy or whatever.
Al is in his hole and he's bitching. Shut up, Al. I told you, get back in your hole. I was interviewing DuByne tonight, and you're no bun cake. Al's just pissed. He's pissed because when you started your channel, he was getting a little heated then, because that was the peak of Al Gore.
Oh, I got pulled through the mud. That was at the height of that whole pushback too, and Mark Morano and all that whole crew was going there, and they were bringing out the new models for the temperatures down there at University of Alabama, Huntsville, and Dr. Roy Spencer, and all those people that had distinguished careers all through their lives. 30-year careers, like distinguished gold medal careers, including John Casey. He sacrificed so much to give us this information. So much. He sacrificed everything to give us this information. And these people just lost everything because they started to question and go, whoa, these things aren't panning out like they're supposed to. And as soon as you said that, your career was gone, your tenure was gone, your pensions were gone, nobody would touch you, you couldn't get hired anywhere else. Well, and it was a purge. So I've been through this purge once before, and whoa, to get, you know, everybody there, whoa, they just had like, you know, crews of people out on the net scouring to try to vilify you for even saying and stepping out of line. And you experienced the same things. I'm sure you experienced it too during that time. Because, boy, if you go against the dogma, even in today's, I think we have free speech and we're allowed to, you know, have our own narratives and compare information. Even back before all this garbage going on now with the new political end of it, even back 2004, 13, 14, that was a whole purge going on there too. So if you think it's new, it's not. It's just a rinse and a repeat now.
Yeah. So we had the Obama administration shutting us down, and then we had a reprieve for 4 years, apparently, on the blogospheres. Towards the end of that 4-year reprieve, the social media giants started to shut us down even worse. I had been demonetized twice, which, I mean, I can't even describe what kind of a hole that creates in your flow, so to speak. But we've been remonetized on both, on all of our platforms. And so moving forward now, we're back into that same paradigm. Biden just passed some kind of etheric climate change policy using his grandeur and his pen. No one voted on it. A lot of that's going to get kicked to the curb, obviously. Like a lot of his executive orders have already been kicked to the curb by the Supreme Court saying, no, Joe, you might be senile, and the higher-ups that are writing this narrative, no, we're not going to go forward with that. So we might see more of that. There might be more pushback against censorship, but we're in the next 4-year period, which is 3.8 years now, is going to be one of suppression and elimination of voices like us. Alternative media is now a threat to the mainstream media. In fact, in the last 48 hours, I've learned that the mainstream media that is left-leaning has now tried to sue and buy up Rupert Murdoch and the Voice of America, which are the last two bastions of conservative free speech. Now, if that goes, OAN, Fox News, and all of the conservative talking pieces now are owned by the left-leaning mainstream media and all their conglomerates. And that would literally be the end to free speech. So how is it we can move forward in this atmosphere safely? Now, obviously, you and I, people like us, we've been moderating things we say, and we put certain things that we say on different platforms. But they're going to still come after us, soup to nuts, every word we say and every consideration we make, that we're part of the anti-team, right? We're trying to prepare people to be self-reliant and self-resilient. That's the last thing they want. And that might be illegal at some point in the future, because what we've seen in the last 4 years is that growing food in your front yard is illegal in many states. So how do you see that whole mainstream media narrative, censorship rolling forward, and how fluxed are we?
Well, the deeper the censorship goes, the closer we're getting to the reset and the real problems that they can't hide anymore. A lot of these things now with the climate are coming out to the point where you can't hide the extremes anymore. And once you understand that those extremes are going to get more intense every day, because you talked about it, the Jupiter-Saturn Great Conjunction, that's where Jupiter rolled over Saturn now to form over these next 3 years into this final formation of this new magnetic field. So each day this magnetic field's forming and getting more intense. So there's nowhere, you can't hide it anymore. They're not going to be able to continue with this. It's a gas that's creating the change because it's going to happen too fast, too large, too things like earthquakes and landslides and sinkholes that are going to not be explainable through a gas. Rips, earth fissures, earth cracks, collapsing bridges, breaking pipelines, all this kind of stuff just won't make sense. Rivers flowing backwards because something got blocked on an earth rip or kind of an upswell or an uplift. It's going to be unmaskable at this point. And then the only thing to do with that is distract away, because people, if they don't, I don't think there'll be enough time for them to start getting angry and ask a lot of questions. It'll be more about trying to keep the wheels on as long as they can, and rule of law, and keeping people so they're not pointing fingers and asking questions as these earth changes really set in to disrupt our society. And that includes food deliveries and growth of food. Like, Earth's going to get pushed further closer to the sun, drawn in closer, but then at the same time in the opposite seasons, you get pulled out a little further.
Yeah.
So we're going to start to see these extreme fluctuations in things coming up. And I would say we've crossed the magnetic line in 2019. And as we're intensifying through this last loop, that was it. Did you notice how much not only ceremony was around this changing of the age from Pisces into Aquarius, but in the astrology movement too, from earth into air, like both of those are quickening signs.
Yeah.
And we're coming in a quickening sign, meaning things move faster. The Earth's going to shake more. It's going to be faster.
Well,
so how much
DuByne,
ceremony was around that?
I think that
we're coming into the new era. They can't hide it anymore, and it's not going to be hidden. It's going to be deflected.
Yeah, I think that we're talking about cycles inside of cycles, and the cycle you're talking about here, the gas giant alignment, has everything to do with the bond cycle. You're familiar with that one? That's a 1,000-year periodicity cycle. Yeah. And if we just go back, this would align with the bond cycle. Maybe there was one in 1,000 AD. The problem with the narrative there is that we don't have much information from about 200 AD to 1,500 AD. Very limited. But we do know that the last alignment that you've been showing, you've been showing for 6 years is this particular alignment. When was the last time that these gas giants? Was it 29 or 79 AD, or sometime around the time of Christ?
Yeah, 79 AD. Because I went to the different models there. I went to JPL and I went to a solar system scope, and I used a couple of other small off ones. I can't remember what they were because they didn't work that well. But, I just spent a couple of days just going back through every single year, because I knew approximately where the grand solar minimum sat, like the start points on the classic dating of the start point. But then I also matched it through history on a collapse of a society. So I started just, looking for major events across the planet and collapses of dynasties and kingdoms and whatever, resets of this, that, or the other, especially the currency resets. And I just started looking at the geometry of where the planets were, and I started to notice this particular parallel alignment. They're always in a parallel, and they're either off a little bit, or they're similar, but all those four gas giants are always making something unique all in one quadrant, but this time they're in a perfect square.
Yeah.
So, and then I was like, that's strange. I never saw them in a square like this. So let's see when's the last time they're going to be in a square. So I went all the way back and all the way back. Man, is this the only time it's ever been in a square? But luckily, I was able to find that square at 79 AD, just the same matching. It's 1 degree arc off a difference from Jupiter's 1 degree arc closer to making the square. But here's the thing. After I did all that research back in 2013-14, all the models had been updated, so you can't go back that far anymore. And that's what I found real strange. Like, yeah, the models still work, but you can only go back a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
So I was so happy I did the research then, because I was able to go back 2,500 years. And why is it suddenly they changed all the software where you can only go back a couple hundred years? Is this being hidden? And that's another question, because I don't think they want people to just, like an armchair astronomer, to go out there and use this software and start banging on these planets and go, wait, that does match up. This guy maybe has some validity to it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But we've been going a little too long for a podcast, so let's end it here. We'll
Yeah, let's roll, man.
Yeah,
I'm going to finish a video tonight on electric geology and ancient Cherokee Indian sites off the Lichtenberg formations. We'll see.
Yeah, and you've done some amazing work on Native American historical sites on the East Coast in Tennessee. So check those out on his main channel. He did a great show that I haven't watched yet. The one was on plasma from 2 days ago, but the most recent show on the potentially 13 stones mimicking the calendar in Africa, right? What were you saying about that?
Well, the site that's in East Tennessee, this is interesting. There were 2 sites in East Tennessee that were, continuously habited for, let's say, since 7,900 BC, that they have a record of continuous habitation. And then on top of that, the Cherokee had come in and set up some of their major cities. 2 of their largest burial mounds were in the same area, and then the TVA came in and flooded it all. But before, when they were doing the excavations in the 1970s, they found something interesting, and it's only one photo and one little caption, there's a couple paragraphs. They found a line of stones. There were 13. That's what caught my attention. 6 stones or 9, I would have known, whatever. It was 13 stones set facing directly, and they think it had faced the solstice. Yeah. But they didn't know which year, and they didn't get a chance to do enough more research, and then it got flooded in. And obviously when they started to, they didn't understand Adam's calendar and all that stuff back then in the 70s, but if they had, they probably would have saved a little more data from that.
Yeah.
But to have 13 stones at whatever it was, say 9,000 years ago, lining up to some sort of pointing east into just like the Serpent Mound, it was the same thing. It pointed over to one of the solstices, but they never did enough research to map it out to see what it was. And magically, it's all underwater. Now, for me, even back then, they said it was the greatest treasure trove of historical artifacts, and not only prehistoric sites, but Native American Indian burial grounds in all of the Southeast U.S., and they put it all underwater in a matter of years. I think they hid it purposefully. That's what my research is about. Yeah, because you can't. And then coming back to where did this lead me? Was the electric geology. When you look where the plasma had struck onto the planet here, and it left these Lichtenberg, formations all over the place. Well, one of them had hopped over. I think it's continental, maybe metallurgy in the crust or something. But you could see where it hopped over on an arc, and right where that middle point is, where it came out. All these Native American Indian sites are right in this center, jumping between 2 mountain ranges, where I think there was a special arcing formation. And I want to go down there, drive down there an hour, a couple hours from here, and then really feel the area. Because I was with an intuitive person, and they're like, something paleoelectric is happening here. They're like, man, this is the most intense energy place I've ever been. That was the craziest thing coming over the side of the mountain. And so I'm trying to put all this information together on did the Native American Indians, obviously they did, they're way more in tune than we are, but they understood that these energy spots were already in the earth from some sort of, I'm going to say was it interplanetary lightning or was it crustal jump lightning? Because think about over in California, and we're over here in the Craton, and there might have been a difference in charge, and then with what we're about to experience in 2024, maybe something arced between parts of a continent, and it's sort of a transistor form as well, because Andy Hall's always talking about this. Maybe there was planetary scarring and lightning, like you look at in Mars, but then also something could have jumped in an arc between continental boundaries, continental plates here on the Earth itself. So where it struck on the Earth is where all the Native American Indian burial mounds and all the biggest villages and all that prehistoric stuff is right in that arcing spot on the planet. So this is my whole research. Since I'm out there, area I can go look at it myself.
Yeah, so you're talking two different types of paradigms geologically and anthropologically. For the person listening out there that's a layman, we're talking about the grand cosmic catastrophe scale event, which is a 12,000, 6,900 year periodicity. Every quadrant gets banged, and we're working on a 25,000 year grand cycle, which is called also the Yuga cycle. This is the cosmic catastrophe cycle. It happens every 6,500 years. Big flexure point on 12,009. Bigger flexure point on the major great year cycle, which is the entire Yuga cycle. But what we're learning in the last 5-10 years from all our research, all these esoteric researchers, is that the natives knew about these cycles, and they built their mounds and their sites embedded in these Lichtenberg patterns, in these plasma discharge events. That's where the Serpent Mound is. That's where all the mounds are, and the major Cahokia society built their structures to either renovate. I don't know, they were revering these. It was reverence to the events, or they lost most of their people there, or it was handed down from their ancestors. But the point is, we've been lied to. It's all of the mythology is astrotheological. So when you find those 13 stones facing east, you're looking at Jesus and the 12 apostles, 13. And when you see these other stories that are written in narratives about people, they're talking about astrotheological events, which means they looked at the archaeoastronomy. In ancient times, they looked up at the heavens, and they created mythology about them. That's what the Bible is. That's what the Quran is. That's what the Dead Sea Scrolls tell us about. They were talking about astrological events that were so impactful, they impacted societies, and we've created religions about them. But the spiritual nature of these events means that we have to wake up. And Graham Hancock did not say this, that humans are suffering amnesia, but people often say he said that. That was Velikovsky. Velikovsky was the first person. He was an actual psychiatrist. He psychoanalyzed people from every country in the world, and he concluded that as a human species, we are suffering from amnesia from a cosmic catastrophe that happened 10,000 or more years ago. And that is embedded in our DNA. We all know about it. That's how we act. That's why we act the way we do. And the disinformation campaign is to keep us away from that knowledge and to not realize our past. Final words.
I would say keep your eyes to the stars and keep your eyes to the planets, because that's what's going to cause all these changes. And with the Native American Indians, I think it would be a twofold, where they were using the resonant energy left over, because if you're getting a plasma strike in the crust, it's going to coagulate a lot of minerals on the same atoms. Atomic structure is going to form veins, so you're going to get a lot of that. But at the same time, lightning never strikes twice in the same place. So maybe they're finding it as an energetic zone, but a safety zone as well. And for you, what's your safety zone? I mean, we could talk about plasma discharge and thing, but in the real sense of it, like, where is your safety zone? Mine's here and here for the next week, trying to figure out, because how much food would this thing produce? I mean, look at you. I mean, you know about seed packs. I mean, how much food is this going to produce for people here? That's enough to feed how many hundreds of people do you think, if it was grown out and like a master gardener took all those seeds and put them into full production?
Well, in my honest opinion,
that's what you got to start thinking about.
In my honest opinion, you're looking at about feeding 3,500 people if you could plant that correctly. And then if you save the seeds, you could expand that to 35,000. And in the third season, it'd be 350,000, and so on and so forth. And so, I mean, because you have to learn how to fail to win, because you could plant all those seeds, but you're only going to get maybe 40% to full growth. But you have to start somewhere. And it's unfortunate that we come to the same conclusion. You know, we've been researching this information for almost a decade. And the facts that the elites and the powers that be are actually preventing the masses from understanding this information, it's almost sad. But in my opinion, because I've done a lot of spiritual work, I've done a lot of meditation on this, those people don't want to know this information. A lot of people just don't want to know. And fortunately for us, those are the people that die in this situation. It's not a fortunate thing that they die in any way. This is a very somber occasion. If there's a massive reset on Earth and a large portion of the population dies, those that live are responsible for burying them and taking care of the situation in the aftermath. So it's a very devastating reset. And guess what? The mainstream media, the powers that be, talking about a great reset. They talk about famine in third world countries that has always been happening, but they never, ever translate that to modern humanity, as if it's not possible for people living in big cities. Like, no way New York will ever starve to death. Or like, you know what I mean? Or it's complete.
I mean, the first place.
Talk about it.
Yeah. Anyway, find out what's planting in what you can grow in your area, and remember, always get the heirloom seeds. And they're really easy to use because on the back it shows you the grow area and then the time to plant it, and make sure you get heirloom seeds. Save those seeds and just reach out to other people that have a gardening club, or it's all kind of stuff you can find online for people gardening classes on the weekends, and go help out in a community garden. And it's just up to you now to take action. Diamond and I had been talking about this, but we took the action to go start our own, off-grid kind of, I'm not fully off-grid, but far out in the rural countryside things. I mean, we're actually taking our own action that we're talking about. So that should be a sign for a lot of people out there. If these guys have been banging on for years, like, hey, man, we got to get out of the cities. Things are about to drastically change. And then everybody's out in the countryside now that has been talking about this event coming in, and everybody's out here now that they all left. Everybody's left. And we're all out here now in the countryside trying to get it ready for these changes. Don't you think something like wow is happening, that everybody who's touched into this grand solar minimum thing now has rural property? Do you think that's a coincidence? It's not. It's because you actually can keep coming forward. Jeez.
I'll tell you what.
Unbelievable.
4 years ago, the number one complaint on every one of my commenters on YouTube that I blocked completely was that we were paid shills from the oil and gas industry. Now, look, I just came off of being a homeless addict living in the woods that had multiple felonies for growing cannabis with a graduate degree from university. I've been in hiding. My whole life was destroyed. I could never live around cannabis again. I would never be a member of society. I'm a multiple felon. You will never be anything. That's what I was told. And now I'm a successful alternative media provider. I have a great channel. There's 100,000 people that enjoy this information every day. We get 500,000 views a month on our venues. We eclipse mainstream media channels, and I barely have 70,000 subscribers on Oppenheimer Ranch Project. It's almost hilarious that the exact rhetoric they used against us has turned against them, and that the people are now flocking to our venues, and that the actual venues that have suppressed us have remonetized me. And you've been, I don't think you've ever been demonetized, DuByne. And kudos to you for your.
I get a lot of the videos that'll get demonetized, and I'll have to either check that thing or remove the video and then put it back up with a scrubbed version. And I'm going up around 30 million views on my channel. 30 million. And I look at other channels that have 10 million views and they have 500,000 subscribers.
Right.
Like, you see the throttle back on our channels. Like 30 million views coming up on my channel.
DuByne,
and it's ridiculous. There's really throttle back in the info flow here.
We just hit 25 million views, so we're in the same boat. How many?
Yeah,
how many?
I have 25 million views and 70,000 subscribers. It's like, what?
They watch every video 14 times.
Oh, everyone.
All right. Always
They love you, Diamond. They love you.
Yeah, always a pleasure to talk to you, David. LeakCon 2021 is coming up. You're a keynote speaker. Has Rex reached out to you?
He briefly mentioned it, and we were going to touch base. He wanted to do a little something because he's interested in the Cherokee and the cave paintings that I'd come across here in the cave art in East Tennessee. You think somebody would have put that together with a plasma geology like they did with everything else across the planet, but the stuff out in Tennessee, oh, don't touch it, don't look at it. Like, there's a concerted effort to hide everything in Tennessee archaeological out here. I don't get it. Well, and here I am looking at.
Look, do you know that there were
discoveries? And I'm like, wait a second.
Listen, do
you
know
look the same as those ones out there?
In the early 1900s, there were efforts to suppress an entire pygmy population from Tennessee. There are hundreds of thousands of burials in your area of small people that lived here 8,000 years ago, and nobody wants anyone to know about them. Those are the pygmy burials, and they're right in your region. And that's what was suppressed. Just like the information from the Grand Canyon coming from Egypt, there were Egyptian mummies in the Grand Canyon. There was a pygmy population on the East Coast. They suppressed all of the large mound features in all east of the Mississippi, all the way up into Michigan, Missouri. We're talking the Cahokia clan. These are the largest pyramids in the world. These eclipse the size of the pyramids in Egypt. They're just as big, just as significant, and they're made with dirt, not even rock. This means that humans had to move bushels of dirt in wheelbarrows for decades to make these mounds. So clearly they're hiding the information from us. And can you imagine an entire pygmy population of tiny people like Homo floresiensis in Tennessee maybe a few thousand years ago? That because America was stolen from the natives here. So they want to hide that information because they want the grandeur. But the Vikings had been here prior to that. There were other populations of other bipedal hominids. And this is what we're being lied to about. And it's very sad. And I'm so pleased to be your friend, to be exposing this to the people. And it swells my heart that people will listen to this and they will gain knowledge and they believe us because we have nothing to hide.
You're on your own. You got to do your own energy now. Anyway, Diamond, I'm going to take off here. I got a video to do, but thanks for having me on tonight. And I'll reach out to Rex to see what this whole LeakCon 2020, book it now and see what it is.
It's LeakCon 2021. It's an online event. It's going to be on April.
On 2021.
Yeah. It's April 20th, 2021, 4/20, 2021. Just like last year's LeakCon Gaia that never happened because of the pandemic. This one will happen because you're going to be watching it at home with David DuByne, Diamond from the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, Rex Bear, Adrian D'Amico, Suspect Sky, Micah T. Dank, esoteric author, and many others. So stay tuned for updates. Always a pleasure to have David DuByne on. Check out Adapt 2030 over at YouTube, his new channel, Mini Ice Age Conversations. Always a pleasure to have you on, David, and we'll talk to you, let's say, next week.
Let's say next week. If the comets haven't come and the CME doesn't black us out, we'll have another conversation next week.
And that's a boom to knowledge. Be safe. We love you. East Tennessee, boom.